There's only two reasons why your business isn't exploding like everybody seems to be. You don't have a way of getting customers profitably, or you don't have product market fit. If you know that number one is your problem, you need to watch this video here. Because today we are talking about how to achieve product market fit through the slightly scary but very rewarding pivoting. This is exactly how giants like Airbnb, Netflix, and even YouTube actually turn their humble starts into absolute life-changing explosions for everyone involved. And it's exactly how I've helped over 100 clients solve their problems and move on to much larger, much more profitable problems. Yay, I guess. So let's start with the term product market fit. What is it exactly? It's what happens when you create something that people actually want and are willing to pay for. Product market fit means that you've found a good market and you've built something that perfectly satisfies that market's needs. When you achieve this, your business stops feeling like you're pushing a boulder uphill. Companies that achieve it are laser focused on delivering the right value to the right people at the exact right time. But here's where most businesses get stuck. They create solutions that nobody really asked for, and we, as the founders, sometimes don't even know it. Now let's actually break down what really creates the magical product market fit. It's a simple recipe with just a few ingredients. You need a crystal clear picture of who your target customer is. And not just demographics, but actual problems, desires, psychographics, everything. Your solution needs to offer something uniquely valuable that they actually can't get anywhere else. It doesn't need to reinvent the wheel, but it does need to solve the problem better than everyone else. Your product features must directly deliver on the promise you are making. And most importantly, there needs to be enough people actually willing to pay for the thing that you're building. But the real secret to product market fit isn't just finding it once. It's about constant adaptation. The most successful businesses obsess over customer feedback, and they're not afraid to change something when it's needed. They're constantly learning, testing, and refining their approach. Think of product market fit as an ongoing conversation that you're having with your customers and not a one-time achievement. Companies that master this conversation build foundations that support sustainable, explosive growth. Whilst other companies struggle to gain traction, these businesses seem to grow effortlessly. And I'd even go as far to say that once you achieve product market fit, scaling kind of becomes inevitable. So in these next sections, I'm going to give you some actionable tools for you to find out if firstly, you've got product market fit and what to do when you realize you're not quite there yet. Okay. Unfortunately, it is quite hard to perfectly define the criteria for product market fit. But in the e-commerce space, I've written up a list of the metrics that you should be at least close to achieving for you to even consider yourself in the ballpark. The customer acquisition cost, or CAC, it obviously varies by industry, but in reality, it shouldn't be more than a third of your customer lifetime value. So it's more a question of the ratio between these. By the way, this is one of those metrics that really dictates whether you're going to win or whether you're going to lose in business. But weirdly, it's one of those things that founders seem to overlook so often. This is why I've got a whole video in the works about this one metric on its own. But all you need to know is how much does it cost for you to claim one customer, and how much is this one customer worth to you over their lifetime. If they're worth over 3 times more than they cost to acquire, then you're in a healthy zone. But we are looking for much higher than that, 10, 20, 30, 50 times. Moving on, another metric that suggests you are close to product market fit, the repeat purchase rate. We need to be at least 25%, 30% plus on this. Your product page conversion rate needs to be minimum 2, but preferably over 5%. Your net promoter score needs to be 40 and above. Your product return rate highly depends on your industry and your price point, but we want it to be low, so anything under 10% would be great. As well as these numerical metrics, organic growth and word of mouth that hasn't been prompted, or maybe positive reviews that haven't been prompted, is also a great indicator that you are really hitting the spot. If you meet or exceed all of these metrics, then it would be hard to argue that you haven't found product market fit. But I can hear you saying, how do we fix it if we are falling short of one or more of these metrics? Well, let me introduce you to something that's going to make this job 10 times easier. The Startup Pivot Pyramid. This tool is used by the best startup schools in the world to help build and fix future billion-dollar businesses. Let me walk you through it. The easiest thing to pivot is at the top, and the hardest thing to pivot is at the bottom. And obviously we want to make our job easier and not harder, so we are hoping that we only need to pivot something at the top. The further down we get, the more difficult it gets. I'll explain why just after I've run through each tier in the pyramid. Growth essentially means marketing or sales or customer acquisition. If we only need to pivot how we get new customers in, this is great news. We don't need to change anything else underneath. Tech, or it's sometimes known as a delivery pivot. So how do we deliver this solution? And I don't mean by Royal Mail. I mean, do we do subscriptions? Do we have a human element beforehand to make sure they buy the right thing? Do we have a white glove service afterwards? Etc, etc. A solution pivot, although as we're talking about the e-commerce space, I guess we can just call it a product pivot. Our product, hopefully, is directly solving the customer's problem. So do we need to find a different solution to this core problem? i.e., do we need to change the product in any way? Problem pivot means that we can't even try to solve this same problem anymore. So we need to go out and find a new problem to fix. It feels like a big risk. It is a big, scary jump. But if you have to do this, then strap in and get it done. And finally, the most difficult of the bunch, the customer pivot. So we have to entirely change the batch of customers that we are trying to serve. Essentially, as you go further and further down the pyramid, you have to solve everything that is above your tier. For example, if you do have to change the customers right at the bottom, then you need to change the problem because it's a new batch of customers. Then you obviously need to change the solution to the new problem. Then you need to change the delivery to that. Then you need to change how you get new customers. Whereas if you only had to change your growth strategy right at the top, then everything else can stay as it was and your problem is solved. For those of you that have got a problem in business, but you don't know which tier you fall into, here's what we do. Firstly, we need to know what exactly is failing here. And this is where knowing all of your metrics makes this job so much easier. Using the target metrics that I chatted about earlier, if your CAC is under that threshold, then likely you only need a growth pivot because you need to come up with a new, cheaper way of getting new customers in. If your CAC to CLTV ratio is a little bit off, then it could be the marketing strategy, or it could be a delivery pivot because you need to figure out a cheaper way of delivering the same thing. With your repeat purchase rate, if that's poor, it gets a little bit more complicated. It could be your solution or anything above that on the pyramid that's the problem here. And I think you're all clever enough to keep going down that track without me holding your hand. So figure out your problems, look at your metrics, and then choose a tier on the pyramid that you think your problem applies to. Okay, so now you have your problem and you have some ideas for pivots. Before you dive headfirst into another stab in the dark and you risk wasting 3 months of trying just to end up back at this exact same position you're in, let's test this new pivot in the quickest and cheapest way possible. Welcome back, MVP style tests. We want to devise what the simplest, quickest, cheapest test is for us to prove whether our pivot fixes the problems or not. We then use the data gathered from those tests to back up your original hypothesis as to what the problem was in the first place, and that the pivot you actually made is the one that you want to move forwards with. Only then do we commit and we make the change and we watch our lives get far easier than they were before. And a bonus is that we watch our bank account start to build real momentum. If you want to know a little bit more about MVP style tests, then here's an entire video on it. Let's continue chatting over there.